converted man here. Yeah, where's everyone? What's going on today? Yeah, I don't know. All right, so this guy is speaking a different language. I believe it is, what was it? Filipino. So I have to rely completely on subtitles. And normally, I wouldn't cover somebody that's not speaking English, although some of the words he says are English. But we can read it together, or I can read what he's, you know, you know. Uh, so I don't know who this Vox is that he's talking about, but he's challenging that guy and other atheists, and so I'm skipping a large portion to just get to the point of his video and my response to it.
Mo maipapaliwanag kung paano ipapaliwanag ng atheism ang reality, which is nabigo ka na ipresenta yun sa naging debate natin last year. Paano mo nasasabi na ito ang superior na pananaw? Kasi hanggang ngayon, wala pa rin. You're just attacking Christianity, you're always calling me names of some sort, pero pagdating sa atheism, tahimik ka. Isa pang excuse, no? Only Christians have the burden of proof. Yan ang isa sa mga paikot-ikot na excuse ng mga atheists tulad ni Vox. But real talk, lahat ng worldview may burden of proof include.
Okay, so this is a common misunderstanding, whether it's intentional or not, I don't know. Atheism is not a worldview. It might be part of a worldview, but by itself isn't one. Atheism is a description, not a prescription. It does not prescribe anything. It just describes the lack of belief that somebody has, and in rare cases, the strong position that somebody might take to say that there is no God. I don't know how many atheists have that position, but I think it's very few. But the position that seems to be, I don't know, difficult to accept, perhaps, is I don't believe in this thing, and that's all I mean by atheist. All right, so, well, how do you say that your view is better than my view? That's assuming that we're saying that. And I'm guessing he's referencing some debate. I don't know what that debate was about or what the context is. We don't need to know what the answer is to know what the answer is not. So I have no idea what 7 to the power of 45 is offhand, but I know the answer isn't 0. I know it's not a negative number. I don't need to know what the answer is to know what the answer isn't. So even if I'm not willing or able to offer an explanation for anything, that doesn't make my position in regards to my lack of belief incorrect. I lack a belief that 44 times 77,000 is 0. And actually, I don't even lack a belief. I know that that's not true. In regards to something else, let's say you had a jar of jelly beans, and you said, is it an odd or even number in there? Well, I don't know. Either way, it could be one or the other. I have no idea. I have no position one way or the other on it. I'm not saying that it's odd. I'm not saying that it's even. I lack a belief in either way. Well, there's jelly beans in it. Okay, it appears that there's jelly beans in it, but that might be some sort of optical illusion. Depends how close I am to examine the jar to see if they appear to be jelly beans or not. Maybe there's just marbles that are painted like jelly beans. There's possibilities there, but it depends upon the claim being made. There's a ghost in this closet. Well, that's interesting. Can we open the closet to examine it? No, the closet is locked. Well, I guess I'm going to be skeptical. I'm going to hold in question the idea of there being a ghost until I presented with some evidence or allowed to examine whatever might be in the closet, etc. So I don't have to explain what's in the closet to, especially if I don't have access to the closet, to say, well, I don't believe in that. So it's not a worldview. And I don't know why, well, I kind of do think I know why some theists think that it's a worldview, but it's not.
Din atheism. So kung atheist ka talaga, kailangan mong ipakita na mas may saysay ang buhay at reality kung walang Diyos. At kung atheist ka, kailangan mong ipaliwanag kung saan galing ang universe, objective morality, consciousness at meaning ng buhay. Mas
Okay, so he said that if you're an atheist, you need to explain where the universe, objective morality,
morality, consciousness at meaning ng buhay.
consciousness, and meaning of life come from. Well, no, you don't. It doesn't matter who you are, be it theist or non-theist, by the way. You don't have to explain any of those things. By the way, you're assuming that those things are actual real things. Maybe they're not. Now, I'm not necessarily debating any individual one of these ideas. I'm simply saying that you're assuming that those things exist. So you explain them. If you're saying that it is a thing, great, wonderful. What's your explanation for that? As a skeptic, I don't make a claim regarding these things. Now, that might be frustrating for you, but that's the way it is. I don't know anything about consciousness, so I couldn't hope to explain it to you. The universe, that's cosmology. That's not my field either. Objective morality, I don't know that that's a thing. I'd have to have proof that it's a thing. So I don't need to explain it since I don't believe in it. The meaning of life, that assumes there is a meaning to life. I don't really know what you mean by that. And so I don't need to explain where these things come from or how these things operate because I'm making no claim about the universe. I'm making no claim about morality or consciousness or the meaning of life. And
ang mga katulad nila
so,
drug delusion.
Unless I'm making a claim, I don't have the burden of proof. That's it. Now, you've saddled yourself with a particular theism that makes many claims, and among those claims might be claims that include the universe, consciousness, meaning of life, and morals. And then you acquire the burden to prove all those things if you wish to do so, if you need to do so in order for us to agree with your conclusion, your grand conclusion about your theism being correct in the end. So your claim might simply be that there is a God. Okay, great. Prove that. Demonstrate that. Use an argument for that. Better than an argument, give us proof and tests for it. But if you don't have those, then okay, what do you have? And don't think that the other side, so to speak, has any burden at all, because you don't even necessarily know what their claim is. If they're saying there is no God, okay, well, then you're going to have to find out what their argument is. How are they going to argue for that? Because then they would have the burden of proof there. They would have some argumentation that would indicate that that idea is true. Now, if they fail to provide that argument, fair enough. You can say, well, you failed to provide an argument, so I get to be skeptical of your conclusion. But if you're failing to give your side, well, it does you no good to say, well, but you never gave your side. Well, it depends on what their side actually is. And misunderstanding their side, whether it be deliberate or undeliberate, isn't going to help you to prove your side. Who has the burden of proof? Well, it depends who you're talking to. Now, imagine you were talking to a person that is of a different religion, a different belief system, perhaps uh, a native who believes in spirit. There's spirits that weave reality together, multiple of them. They don't call it God, they call them spirits. It's a very different belief system than you're used to. So how are you going to convince them that your version of a God is correct and their version of a God is incorrect? How are they going to convince you that their version of spirits is correct and that your version of God is incorrect? So that's a good question. You're going to need something that would convince you. What do they have to offer? What do you have to offer? And you're making the mistake that the idea that there is no God means that we now need to explain the universe without any God that operates it. No, uh, we don't need to explain anything at all unless we're claiming those things. So there you go.
Sensei, even you will die, even Mr. Atheist and others, di man lamang nila kayang ipresenta ang positive case for atheism. Ang lagi nilang excuse, mga Christians lamang daw may burden of proof.
Okay, a positive case for atheism. I'm not sure what that is. Again, I guess he thinks that it's a worldview or something. I don't believe in God. The positive case for this idea is just that I don't believe in it. I'm not sure how I can prove that I don't believe in it. If you're asking me to convince you that to not believe in God, I'm not going to do that. That's not my task. That's not my job. That's not something I wish to do. I'm very interested in the concept of God. I don't have a problem that people believe in God. I understand why people believe in God. Uh, there's a difference, though. If you claim it is, then you acquire the burden of proof. Whatever you claim is true or false, you have the burden of proof to demonstrate. So if you're saying there is a X, whatever X is, in this case it's God, then you must prove that. If you simply say, I believe in God, you have no burden of proof. If you say, I don't believe in God, you have no burden of proof. It's only when you say there is no God or there is a God that you acquire the burden of proof. So you're asking people to demonstrate things that are not their burden to do. Christians have the burden of proof. Well, it depends what the Christian says. If they say they believe in something, then they don't have any burden to show that. If they say that something is, then yes, they do have the burden to show that. And again, it doesn't do you any good to complain about how things work. That is how the burden of proof functions.
Which is a classic textbook example of making excuses. You see, guys, our atheist friends demand evidence from Christians. Pero sila mismo, sila mismo, walang naipapakitang katibayan para sa kanilang pagka-atheist. So,
okay, no evidence to show for their atheism. That is rather incoherent. It's extraordinarily difficult, if not impossible, to prove that I don't hold the belief. I suppose there might be some machine that we could get that would show my brain waves and show when I am thinking about something or not thinking about something. We could make some inferences based on those readings, but acquiring that machine, but I don't know how we're going to do that. We're going to rent it. Are you willing to pay for that? Because I'm not. If you're not going to believe me that I don't believe in X, Y, and Z, then okay, whatever, I don't care. But what you're saying is, well, I want you to show me how it is that the universe and reality operates without a God. Well, that's I'm not saying that I know how that operates. Even if I said, well, the absolute statement, there's no God. Okay. Well, how do you prove X, Y, and Z? Well, it doesn't matter. All I need to demonstrate is there's no God. I don't have to explain the universe. I just have to argue against there being a God. And there's many ways to do that, hypothetically speaking. One argument you could offer would be that the word God is rather incoherent to some degree, that humans can't agree on what this word even means. And more than that, there's no underlying logic to how we establish what that word actually is. The epistemology of it is lacking. So, given that, we don't even know what that word is, and we can't even show that the word is anything that we claim it is, then we must be skeptical that it's a thing, which doesn't mean there is none. So that's a difficult position then. How do we demonstrate that there is none? Well, the only way we could do that would be to show uh, some inconsistencies with the notions that are presented about God. And those don't come from people that don't believe in God. Those come from people that do believe in God. You could go a different route and attack certain characteristics proposed of God. And if you wanted to stick with the incoherent definition route, you could say that since it's something we should be skeptical of, that given that there's no evidence even of it, and that there appears to be no epistemology of it, that it's essentially that you're saying that it isn't, that you're going a bit beyond saying that you can't be sure that it is or isn't. You might as well say it isn't because you have no positive proof that it is. And you could use some argument to support that notion as well.
This time, I'm calling you out, Vox. Huwag kang gagamit dito ng burden of proof excuses na naman. And don't tell me na, ikaw lang may burden of proof. Ganito, ganyan. Blah, blah, blah.
Well, you might be the only one with the burden of proof, whether you like that or not, whether you accept that or not. It depends on the claims being made. I don't know what Vox's argument is. I can't speak on that. But as far as you, well, depends what you're saying. Depends how you're saying it. You may or may not have the burden of proof, and your opponent may or may not have the burden of proof. You're assuming that atheists have a burden of proof, and broadly speaking, atheists seem to take the stance they don't believe in God, which would not be a burden of proof. If theists took those stance that they believe in God, then they wouldn't have the burden of proof. Apologists, however, usually claim that there is a God, so then they gain the burden of proof. So if you're claiming there is something and your opponent is merely claiming that they don't believe in that, they don't have the burden of proof and you do. Complaining about it doesn't change it.
Ipaliwanag mo kasi, paano maipapaliwanag ng atheism ang reality? I always pointed out that.
Okay, explain how atheism explains reality. It doesn't, because it's not a worldview. So there you go. That's the answer.
You must have to do your own homework as well. Kasi kami mga Christians, kapag nagbabato kayo ng mga objections sa amin at sa aming pananampalataya, we are doing our homework. We are following the evidence where it leads.
Well, I've been doing this a while, and in my experience, you don't follow any evidence at all because there isn't any evidence to follow. Or you would simply tell me what that is. What evidence do you think you're following? What homework have you actually done? Because when I press many apologists on this, They refuse to answer my rather simple questions, or what I would view to be simple questions. So don't get me started.
How about you? Pupunta lamang sa excuse na mga Christians lamang may burden of proof. Ngayon, ang challenge sa'yo, ipaliwanag mo sa amin which best explains reality. Since you failed to present good case for atheism.
Okay, so what best explains reality? Well, reality itself is the true nature of reality is perhaps beyond the scope of explanation currently. I would say the scientific method is the best method that we have to explain reality to some degree. How well that works is maybe an open question, but I think it works pretty well given that we have all this technology that seems to function pretty darn well. So that explains a lot of reality, but not all of it. There's going to be some mystery there to unravel, and there's always going to be questions, but not necessarily answers. So you're again making this a false equivalence, saying that you have to explain reality without God. No, I merely observe that there's no reason to believe in God from, at least for me, from my perspective, because the evidence that I have of everything else has empirical evidence or a repeatable test for it, or both. And when it comes to God, well, I don't even know what that is, but so far, everybody that claims that there is a God doesn't offer me empirical evidence or a repeatable test. They usually offer some argumentation. And when I examine that argumentation using informal logic, I find that there's one or more logical fallacies, which means I have to think that the conclusion is one I must be skeptical of. It may be a true conclusion, it may be a false conclusion, doesn't matter, because they need to go fix their argument. And then they never go fix their argument because they refuse to accept that their argument is broken. And instead they wind up complaining about it like you're doing. So, what explains reality? Reality does. The nature of reality, well, I don't know the underlying core nature of reality. Uh, what best explains it? Science. There you go. Cosmology for the universe. If you want to understand morals, that's psychology and evolution, perhaps. A little bit of both there, maybe some biology tossed in. There you go. And as far as what the meaning of life, well, maybe philosophy would have to do that. There you have it. There's good explanations for all these things. So we've explained X, Y, and Z, and at no point did we ever reference God to do so. So if we don't need it in our equation, then why believe it at all? See, it's absolutely simple to explain things the way that they appear to be. But we don't really need to do that. You're asking us to do something that we don't need to do. But I get that you want it explained to you. Okay, so cosmology, that's going to give you, I don't know, the most classic is Big Bang cosmology. That's an adequate explanation of most of how the universe came about to be what it is today. Again, there's going to be some mysteries there, but all right. And then abiogenesis for the origin of life, and then biological evolution after that. And biology and some psychology for morals. And then as far as a meaning to life, maybe it's just subjective and it depends on the person. All right, what else do you need explained? So you keep insisting that, well, you haven't explained this and that and the other thing, and until you do, then I'm not going to believe you. Well, okay, fine, whatever. How do you explain eyebrows? Does God explain eyebrows? No, that's silly. There's nothing in, well, maybe it's not silly, but there isn't anything in the Judeo-Christian teachings that explains why we have facial hair at all. But there are commandments about facial hair and hair on your head, to shave it or not shave it. There are rules about that depending on which tribe you're born into. Now you might think Jesus wiped away those rules. Well, he did, and also he didn't. So it depends how you look at that. But why would God give us facial hair? The Bible doesn't say. Why didn't God give women facial hair? I don't know. Doesn't say. So you're gonna have to explain that without looking at the Bible. The only way to explain that is biology and evolution. So there's going to be things that your belief in God, that your theology does not address. Does it address microwave ovens? No. Cars, oil? No. Molecules or subatomic particles? No. Does it give us any mathematics at all? There's no math equations in the Bible. The word logic, I'm pretty sure the word logic doesn't even appear, nor does the word science appear in the Bible. But the word faith sure does, a lot. So there's things that your theology can't hope to explain to us. So if you're going to make the stance that one must explain all of these things, you have failed to explain all of the things using pure theology. Therefore, your counting of the universe cannot be true under your own conditions. If your conditions are you have to explain everything, or I'm not going to believe you, then I guess we can't believe you. Well, but you guys can't explain it. We never said we could. Okay, then we have to doubt that too. Well, okay, so if we doubt that there is a God, and we doubt that there isn't a God, then that means we don't believe in God. And we don't believe that there isn't a God either. But that doesn't mean that we believe that we can't know if there is or isn't a God. So we're not agnostic, nor are we atheists, or technically we're not an atheist, at least to some degree, although we don't have an active belief, so that does make us an atheist. The only label that kind of fits is skeptic. And you still don't believe in God as a skeptic. So congratulations, you're now on my side, so to speak. Not as if there are sides, but whatever. So there you go. I know you just want to complain. The rest of the video is just him complaining more about, the burden of proof and how it works and him not understanding it. Now, again, because he's not speaking English, it's difficult to respond to, but this claim has been made by many others over time, and it will be made again at some point by somebody speaking English. And so I thought it was interesting to respond to at that level. And if the text translation is correct, then, we're going after his arguments, which is none. He's just complaining. So there really is no argument. Why not just make your positive case for your side? Just say, here's why you should think that there is X. Here's a demonstration of that. And there you go. Case closed. Yet the apologists never seem to actually present any empirical evidence or any repeatable test, and certainly so far no sound argument. And for those reasons, we must be skeptical of their conclusions. Until next time, stay skeptical, and after next time, we'll remain skeptical. Duh. Then